Episode 5. Welcome to episode 5 of Off the Cuff with Magus and the Media as we unlock the Lost Keys of Freemasonry. We have been doing pretty well here in our reading of this book. It has been quite phenomenal. We learning a few things. Lost Keys of Freemasonry, written by Manly P. Hall. Quite brilliant man, if I say so myself. He has led to the enlightenment and or the awakening of many through time since his studying of such topics as Freemasonry, esotericism of all kinds, and the unlocking of secret knowledge inside the human mind and body. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, each chapter as we go through it has been us understanding each of the 3 grades of Masonry, the entered apprentice into the fellow craft. In last episode, we did the Master Mason degree. And so right now, as we go through it, we are on to chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the qualifications of a true Mason. Each chapter, as we go through each grade, we have come to talk about the lost secret, the lost key in each of those grades. They have helped us to understand why the grade is important, and he has this beautiful allegorical language to describe each grade as we go through it, as the path of the individual comes to unfolding us through understanding Masonry in and of itself. One of the big keys and takeaways that I've come to understand in reading this book many times that I have is that the Lodge of Masonry isn't just going to the lodge in your local city or town, but has to do truly with the understanding that there's a lodge on another plane of existence. This other plane is the plane of the mind, the astral plane, the etheric plane, this plane which, as we go through our life experiences, the school of life, these life experiences that we have in our day-to-day lives, we are fine-tuning ourselves as a human individual. And in that fine-tuning, we pass through certain initiation levels. Those initiation levels have been also then broken down into these 3 degrees. These 3 degrees then through an actual lodge in our everyday society, right? In every city, there seems to be a Masonic lodge. In those Masonic lodges, there are rituals for each grade as you go into it. As you reach that 3rd degree in the blue lodge of Masonry, you have then become a Master Mason, and you are, until you've reached that Master Mason degree, you are not a Mason. However, in the last chapter we read, we come to find out that you can be actually, a lot of people have been born into life a Master Mason. And as they are being born into life, life clouds itself. As in, we cloud our mind gets cloudy and we forget these things that we have learned in our past lives or learned in the pre-realm to birth. And when we die, a lot of individuals who have gone through even the degrees have not actually attained Master Masonhood because they have not lived their life according to the Masonic path. And so we must realize that to go through a physical lodge isn't the only way, or isn't the actual way to attain these 3 degrees. You may go through the physical lodge and go through the degree structures and the rituals, which are very important for our body to actually go through these things, because they can be awakened in every organ of our body. Every organ of our body is connected to our mind. And then in doing so, we live out those experiences, like I was just saying, in our life, and we pass through them into the halls of the mysteries, of the halls of the secret societies that are in the other realm. So let us move on to chapter 6, the qualifications of a true Mason. Here we are. Every true Mason has come into the realization that there is but one lodge, that is the universe, and but one brotherhood composed of everything that moves or exists in any of the planes of nature. He realizes that the Temple of Solomon is really the temple of the solar man. Sol on. The king of the universe manifesting through his three primordial builders. He realizes that his vow of brotherhood and fraternity is universal, and that mineral, plant, animal, and man are all included in true Masonic craft. His duty as an elder brother to all the kingdoms of nature beneath him is well understood by the true craftsman, who would rather die than fail in this, his great obligation. He has dedicated his life upon the altar of his God and is willing and glad to serve the lesser through the powers he has gained from the greater. The mystic Mason, in building the eyes that see behind the apparent ritual, recognize the oneness of his life manifesting through the diversity of form. The true disciple of ancient Masonry has given up forever the worship of personalities. With his greater insight, he realizes that all forms and their position in material affairs are of no importance to him compared to the life which is evolving within. Those who allow appearances or worldly expressions to deter them from their self-appointed task are failures in Masonry. Let me repeat that. Those who allow appearances or worldly expressions to deter them from their self-appointed tasks are failure in Masonry. For Masonry is an abstract science of spiritual unfoldment. Material prosperity is not the measure of soul growth. The true Mason realizes that behind these diverse forms, there is one connected life principle, the spark of God in all living things. It is this life which he considers when measuring the worth of a brother. It is to this life that he appeals for a recognition of spiritual unity. He realizes that it is the discovery of this spark of unity which makes him a conscious member of the Cosmic Lodge. Most of all, he must learn to understand that this divine spark shines out as brightly from the body of a foe as it does from the dearest friend. The true Mason has learned to be divinely impersonal in thought, action, and desire. That last line, most of all, he must learn to understand that this divine spark shines out brightly from the body of a foe as it does from the dearest friend. The true Mason has learned to be divinely impersonal in thought, action, and desire. Now let's break that down. It's one of those ideas that we come to even in our ceremonial magical practice. I read it in book 4 of Aleister Crowley's Magic and Mysticism. Is that, or I also, in his John St. John, in his journals, is that when we get to a certain level of initiation or a certain mode of consciousness in our life, it's that when you're walking around, we must interact with reality as if we are interacting with God itself. And God comes to us in many forms, right? And in those many forms, we can see God in a blade of grass. We can see God in the rainfall, in the trees around us. We can see God in our loved ones. However, we must also realize that we must see God in even those which are our foes or enemies, or people that we don't really care for. And I think this is a really hard thing to come across because I come across it in my own life every day. There are those of us that you're not supposed to like everybody, nor are you supposed to love everybody. However, you must interact with everybody as if you're interacting with them as divine. And it's in that interacting where you can be impersonal. It's not that you should shun or be cold, but it's that we should understand that we don't have to give everything to those individuals, but we must treat them with respect. And in treating them with respect, we are treating God with respect. And this is something that can even help us. And it comes, as I'm talking about it, it makes me feel like how a lot of which in this on this channel or in our everyday life experiences, it is that we must see everybody as their own character in the story. And a lot of times in our animes, for instance, in our mangas, in our comic book characters, our main characters actually interact with everybody and they make friends with everybody. In Naruto, it's called Talk no Jutsu. Naruto, the main character of the anime and manga, Naruto, he makes friends with every enemy that he faces. And if he cannot make friends with them, he will do what he has to do to defeat that foe so that person doesn't hurt his friends. However, so many times he comes across and he's able to talk to them. They may have this big battle, and in that big battle, a lot of crazy stuff happens. But all of a sudden, at the end of that battle, he helps those individuals. Like in Naruto, there's an arc called the Pain arc. Pain is one of the bad guys that we think is the big bad guy. Spoiler alert, we think Pain is the big bad guy, but actually he isn't. There are more, but he's a puppet. And Pain doesn't really understand that he is a puppet throughout the story. And I think that's what most bad guys or most people we don't understand. They don't understand that they are actually being puppeted by forces of nature that are not beyond their control, but can be taken under control by them if they understood that these impersonal forces are actually controlling their moods and actions. You can call them psychological demons. You can call them corporate symbols. We can call them many things. Old traumas, family traumas, and birth traumas, or stuff from past life karma. And if we don't understand that we must put these things underneath our own control and not be controlled by them, that then we can see them and see them happening when we're confronting these things with other people. And so back to Pain. Pain has this ability. He has the Rinnegan, which is one of these eye abilities that in Naruto these bad guys seem to have. A lot of people, and good guys too. This Rinnegan is given to him by another person. But in that Rinnegan, he has the ability of the Sage of Six Paths. So he has 6 different powers that's coming from Buddhism, the symbolism and metaphors of Buddhism. But that's not the point. The point is the Talk no Jutsu is that Naruto as a character is just trying to collect friends. And in collecting friends, he does that because he felt like he never belonged. And he never wants others to not feel like they don't belong as well. And so he's trying to understand their positions. And not in everyday life, we don't always get to, don't get to understand everyone else's positions. So we must bring these things into, as Heidegger would call it, into the clearing, so we can bring light and truth onto them. So one of those things to come to understand as we go along in our lives is that we, as in Naruto, we can understand that the Talk no Jutsu is one of those things that we can then take to everyday life. You can talk through things with people without having to resort to physical violence or whatever these things are. And in time, if the talking doesn't, the talking doesn't help, then we can walk away from the situation. Right. Back to the chapter is that these impersonalness is that it's kind of like in Hinduism where, what do they say? You can tell that Shiva is underneath everyone's eyes, or that the persona that we're expressing ourselves through, which is, my persona, who I am, or everyone we're coming across, but behind those eyes is the God or Shiva or Brahma, and understanding that, then our lives can become a lot easier, because then maybe we won't take things so seriously, and we won't think that everyone's trying to harm us, right? Because we can understand that everything that then goes on in our lives is actually part of the mystery school that we're in, called the world. And in that school, we can burn karma or add karma. And what we're trying to do is trying to burn that karma so we can get off the wheel, right? Get off the great journey and get back to living life, in unity with God, right? Let us continue. So we meet again, John. They know that all religions are but one story told in divers ways for peoples whose ideals differ, but whose great purpose is in harmony with Masonic ideals. North, east, south, and west stretch the diversities of human thought. And while the ideals of man apparently differ when all is said and the crystallization of form with its false concepts is swept away, one basic truth remains. All existing things are temple builders, laboring for a single end. No true Mason can be narrow, for his lodge is the divine expression of all broadness. There is no place for little minds in a great work. The true Mason must develop the powers of observation. He must seek eternally in all the manifestations of nature for the things which which he has lost because he has failed to work for them, he must become a student of human nature and see in those around him the unfolding and varying expressions of one connected spiritual intelligence. The great spiritual ritual of his lodge is enacted before him in every action of his fellow man. The entire Masonic initiation is an open secret, for anyone can see it played out in the city street corners as well as in the unattracted wilderness. The Mason has sworn that every day he will extract from his life its message for him and build it into the temple of his God. He seeks to learn the things which will make him of greater service in his divine plan, a better instrument in the hands of the great architect who is laboring eternally to unfold life through the medium of living things. The Mason realizes, moreover, that his vows, taken of his own free will and accord, give him the divine opportunity of being a living tool in the hands of a master workman. The true Master Mason enters his lodge with one thought uppermost in his mind. How can I, as an individual, be of greater use in the universal plan? What can I do to be worthy, to comprehend the mysteries which are unfolding here? How can I build the eyes to see the things which are concealed from those who lack spiritual understanding? The true Mason is supremely unselfish in every expression and application of the powers that have been entrusted to him. No true brother seeks anything for himself, but unselfishly labors from the good of all. No person who assumes a spiritual obligation for what he can get out of it is worthy of applying for the position, even of water carrier. The true light can come only to those who, asking nothing, gladly give all to it. And to stop there for a little bit, something coming to me when I'm thinking about that is how upon reading these things, which we all can do, right? This is an open secret to all. Like there's nothing secret to anyone in becoming a Mason, in understanding that you are a magician in your world or a mystic. That there's no big secret for the Illuminati to hold from you, and that there is nothing satanic about any of this thing. The thought is that if reading this material by Manly P. Hall or any of the great philosophers, mystics, and thinkers of our world, occultists and esotericists, is that this isn't satanic, right? And you cannot conflate, even when they use the term Lucifer in the text, to Satanism, because they don't mean the same thing. Satanic or Satan means adversary. Lucifer means light bringer. Like, we cannot conflate these two terms when one is trying to help you understand that you were bringing light to your consciousness or to your being, and the other one is being an adversary upon the path. And an adversary isn't an almighty terrible thing, because we all have adversaries on the path. It goes back to my analogy of Naruto with Pain, Madara, Gaara, any of these characters in Naruto, for those Naruto fans out there, is that once they are first adversaries, but then as adversaries go, if you confront them, they disappear. They don't disappear because you do harm to them always, but because you are bringing things into a clearing and bringing light to it. And that light can actually lift you from this adversarial interaction that you have. And that secrets, that this is an open secret seems to be a contradiction, but it's not. Secrets can be out there it's just that your eyes aren't able to become your eyes and mind aren't aware to those things, which is then why it talks about how a Master Mason is somebody who is observant. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that somebody's trying to hide it from you. And that goes to what most of the massive amounts of conspiracy theorists out there want to do, is they want to try to tell us that there are people trying to hide stuff from us, which there are. But when it comes to this brotherhood, this brotherhood of Masons, of Freemasons, is that it's not, no one's trying to hide anything. You either want to do it or you don't. And if you don't want to go to a lodge, you can read about it, but you must enact the things into the world so the ritual can take place. And then take all the things you learn and find a space and reflect and meditate upon it. And to go back to the idea is that all these things here is talking about how just to be a better person, how to be the heroes the hero of your journey, how to be the main character of the anime, the comic book, the film, the literature, but how to take heed in your life and understand that I can be observant, aware, I can give service, and I can take action. And in doing all those things, I can build myself up in a way that then I am giving back to the world. In continental philosophy, there's a character by the name of Heidegger, and Heidegger is trying to consolidate and bring back to us an understanding of what being is. And he's not talking about particulars, like one being, like a cup, a being like a person, a being like an animal, a being like a blade of grass, but he's trying to talk about big B being. And what that basically means is it's another way for him talking about God or the one, whatever this idea of beingness is, the big B. And what we are is we are beings in a world, or small b beings in a world. And we cannot take ourselves out of that world. And that there is always something that is upon the horizon for us to see, and that is death. And death is really important, and this is another adversary that you could say that we come up against. But it doesn't have to be something that is harmful to us, because upon death we can raise ourselves up to the next level and then be reborn into the world if we choose, or not, and just merge with everything. But to me, the more I contemplate as my life goes on, is that I actually truly love being in the world. And the more I take responsibility for my actions and bring the junk out of the darkness and into the light, that I become lighter. But that doesn't mean the responsibilities that I have go away. They actually, it says, I think in the first chapter or the prologue of the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Manly P. Hall talks about how the more that I aspire through initiation to become a better person and take the master Mason path, the Masonic path, is the more my responsibilities actually grow greater. Because the responsibilities grow greater is because I have more awareness and I am able to observe the things and the natural everyday happenstance of the world. Is that this isn't for small minds, he says. That small minds cannot grasp big things. But that doesn't mean small minds have to stay small all the time. Small minds can grow into big minds through shedding of old ideas and not getting caught up in the forms. And I don't mean to conflate that with the theory of forms from Plato, but the forms of Maya, the forms of our everyday experience, that words and thoughts and these things, that if I understand that I'm not going to get caught up in the forms that are around me like that I want to aspire to Buddhahood, or I want to aspire to goddom, or I want to aspire to this master Mason, is that I am truly being observant of and aware. That's okay, John. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to talk about this book. So all is well. And if you have questions, just ask a question, right? And so he says, the true master Mason enters his lodge with one thought uppermost in his mind. How can I, as an individual, be of a greater use in the universal plan? What can I do to be worthy to comprehend the mysteries which are unfolding here? How can I build the eyes to see the things which are concealed from those who lack spiritual understanding? The true Mason is supremely unselfish in every expression and application of the powers that have been entrusted to him. No true brother seeks anything for himself, but unselfishly labors for the good of all. No person who assumes a spiritual obligation for what he can get out of it is worthy of applying for the position, even of a water carrier. The true light can come only to those who, asking nothing, gladly give all to it. The true brother of the craft, while constantly striving to improve himself mentally, physically, and spiritually through the days of his life, never makes his own desires the goal of his work. He has a duty, and that duty is to fit into the plans of another. He must be ready at any hour of the day or night to drop his own ideals at the call of the builder. The work must be done, and he has dedicated his life to the service of those who know the bonds of either time nor space. He must be ready at any moment, and at any moment's notice, and his life should be turned into preparing himself for that call, which may come when he least expects it. The Master Mason knows that those most useful to the plan are those who have gained the most from the practical experiences of life. It is not what goes on within the tiled lodge which is the basis of his greatness, but rather the way in which he meets the problems of daily life. The true Masonic student is known by his brotherly actions and common sense, right? The true Masonic student is known by his experiences in life and how he treats others. Every Mason knows that a broken vow brings with it a terrible penalty. Let him also realize that failure to live mentally, spiritually, and morally up to one's highest ideals constitutes the greatest of all broken oaths. Let him also realize that failure to live mentally, spiritually, and morally up to one's highest ideals constitutes the greatest of all broken oaths. Living not up to who you truly can be is a broken oath in and of itself. So it's not even telling secrets, right? People are like, if you tell the secrets of the Masons, they will hang you up from a bridge by your feet with a red sash, and you will be hanging there like the fool from the tarot, right? It's just another, people may take this symbolism and then enact it, but that doesn't mean they're Masons on the path. That means they're just terrible people. Life's experiences will be what show you if you've broken your oath or not, because then life will throw at you things that will help you understand your folly. He must realize that a misdirected life is a broken vow, right? There you go. He must realize that a misdirected life is a broken vow, and that daily service, purification, and the constructive application of energy is a living invocation which builds within and draws to him the power of the Creator. His life is the only prayer acceptable in the eyes of the Most High. An impure life is a broken trust. A destructive action is a living curse. A narrow mind is a strangled cord around the throat of God. All true Masons know that their work is not secret, but they realize that it must remain unknown to all who do not live the true Masonic life, which is why they say we do not ask people to join. If you ask a Mason, then you will go start upon your path. So ask, but they do not recruit. Yet if the so-called secrets of Freemasonry were shouted from the rooftops, the fraternity would be absolutely safe, for certain spiritual qualities are necessary before the real Masonic secrets can be understood by the brethren themselves. You must walk and work and practice the path, whatever that is. Understand that true devotion and true practice and true living these things out are the only way that any of these secrets can be known. Understand the symbols, you train the symbols, learn and study, reflect, and then continue. Yet if the so-called secrets of Freemasonry were shouted from the rooftops, the fraternity would be absolutely safe, for certain spiritual qualities are necessary before the real Masonic secrets can be understood by the brethren themselves. Hence it is that the alleged exposures of Freemasonry, printed by the thousands and tens of thousands in 1730 down to the present hour, cannot injure the fraternity. They reveal merely the outward forms and ceremonies of Freemasonry. Only those who have been weighed in the balance and found to be true, upright and square, have prepared themselves by their own growth to appreciate the inner meanings of their craft. To the rest of their brethren, within or without the lodge, their sacred rituals must remain. As Shakespeare might have said, words, words, words. Within the Mason's own being is concealed the power, which, blazing forth from his purified being, constitute the builder's word. His life is the sole password which admits him to the true Masonic lodge. Think about what that means. His life is the sole password which admits him to the true Masonic lodge. So no matter, even if people learn the handshakes or learn the secret words that Masons tell themselves to know that who they are, that none of that actually matters. And that makes me think of the movie Ghost Dog. It's a brilliant movie about the Bushido's code, but it's done in New York, and it's more in a modern day of like the 90s or the 80s, of one man who is just living his life through the time. And as he's walking, there's a certain walk and a certain aura about him that as he's coming across another person walking the opposite way on the sidewalk, who actually is the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, but he's all, he's decked out in army colors. and whatever he's doing, he's just walking. And the monologue that the main character has in Ghost Dog is that he actually knows that is a fellow brother, a fellow wielder of the sword, a fellow man on the path of enlightenment, a fellow Buddha, right? Is because there was a look they gave each other. And that look, or the aura about them as they're walking, I think translates analogically to this line, is that his life is the sole password which admits him to the true Masonic Lodge. Just as if you know a person by their walk, if they train martial arts or have the ability, they've done ballet or dance or whatever, or they studied and trained a certain way because their eyes twinkle with a certain wisdom, that your body takes on the initiation and the experience of learning the symbols and the signs and the keywords and everything that you do in your Masonic journey, which also the journey of the magician, the journey of the mystic. These are the same things. His spiritual urge is the spring of acacia, which through the darkness of ignorance still proves that the spiritual fire is alight. Interesting enough, acacia is another one of those things that we hear in all of our books, in our knowledge and our mythologies. Acacia is another way to make DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is produced every night in our brain, in our pineal gland, and also when we're born and also when we die. Something that can help transfer you or helps you transcend for just a little bit, into another world, into the dream world. Within himself, he must build those qualities which will make possible his true understanding of the craft. He can show the world only forms which mean nothing, that life within is forever concealed until the eye of spirit reveals it. The Master Mason realizes charity to be one of the greatest traits which the Elder Brothers have unfolded, which means not only properly regulated charity of the pursuit, but charity in thought and action. He realized that all the workmen are not on the same step, but wherever each may be, he is doing the best he can according to his light, each laboring with the tools that he has, and he, as a Master Mason, does not spend his time in criticizing, but in helping them to improve their tools. Instead of blaming poor tools, let us always blame ourselves for having them. Right? What's that mean to me? That seems to mean, let's not blame our parents. Let's not blame society. Let's not blame the Illuminati or the great Satanists or, the weather for our problems. These being poor tools, let us just get better tools. Let's refine ourselves to be in a better space, and let's make the mind stuff, the cheetah right, of the mind, get in the way of proper thinking, right action, right ethics. That we just blame ourselves for having them. I think that's better. Don't be a victim to circumstance, but understand that you are the master who makes the grass green, quoting Robert Anton Wilson. The Master Mason does not find fault. He does not criticize, nor does he complain. But with malice towards none and charity towards all, he seeks to be worthy of his Father's trust. We all probably do that, criticize and complain on a daily basis. Let's just try to slim it down and have good enough friends and companions around and and partners around us that will call us out on it in a loving way, or sometimes in a sarcastic way, or sometimes in a way that just helps jar us and jolt us, know our place. In silence, he labors. With compassion, he suffers. And if the builders strike him as he seeks to work with them, his last word will be a prayer for them. The greater the Mason, the more advanced in his craft, the more fatherly he grows, the walls of his lodge broadening out until all living things are sheltered and guarded. Within the blue folds of his cape, from laboring with the few, he seeks to assist all, realizing with his broader understanding the weakness of others, but the strength of right. A Mason is not proud of his position. He is not puffed up by his honor, but with a sinking heart is eternally ashamed of his own place, realizing that it is far below the standard of his craft. The further he goes, the more he realizes that he is standing on slippery places, and if he allows himself for one moment to lose his simplicity and humility, a fall is inevitable. Right? And that makes us think of who was it? Doubting Thomas, right? Or as Jesus is walking on water and he pulls Thomas. Bible buffs, please tell me if I'm using the wrong name, but you get the idea is that he doubted for 1 second and he fell into the water as Jesus still walked upon the water. That is an analogy. That's a myth for us to understand our place in this life, is that if you doubt the magic of the world, if you doubt the power that you have within, that you will fall from that grace and not be able to use it. And it'll come back once you gain true insight again, and the true reflection. But the fall is inevitable, it says. A true Mason never feels himself worthy of his craft. A student may stand on the top of a fool's mountain, self-satisfied in his position, but the true brother is always noted for his simplicity. Right? That simplicity also sounds like the sages, the Taoist sage, the Zen sage, the Buddhist sage. It's known for this simplicity. Why Taoism is so simple is that it's just an understanding of the principles of things, the first principles of things, right? The way of God. First principle, let's go to it. What is it? It's this, that as things unfold, we understand the waxing and waning of life. That's why I like Taoism so much, is that we see the yin and the yang in all things. The ups and the downs, the moving as they go. It's not two separate things like Cartesian dualists in our scientific science of today wants to see it as, but as if we can see it more in that Eastern way, or an alchemical way in the West, is that all things interact together. As I move so far one way, it will come back down as the pendulum swings. And in that Taoist way, we understand that the yin and the yang are but one thing, and that's that circle, that wu, the wu way, like the movement of action through non-action. Once you get so good at things, it is not that you will have to stop studying, but you must forever be more fervent in your actions, that you must have that awareness, that observability. And so practice and devotion, that's why practice and devotion are so important, is that it'll instill it in you like it's second nature. But you will never stop practicing. A Mason cannot be ordained or elected by ballot. He's evolved through ages of self-purification and spiritual transmutation. There are thousands of Masons who are brethren in name only, for their failure to exemplify the ideals of their craft makes them unresponsive to the teachings and purpose of Freemasonry. The Masonic life forms the first key of the temple, and without this key, none of the doors can be opened. When this fact is better realized and lived, Freemasonry will awake and speak the word so long withheld. The speculative craft will then become operative, and the ancient wisdom so long concealed will rise from the ruins of its temple as the great spiritual truth yet revealed to man. How does that happen? The Masonic life forms the first key of the temple, and without this key, none of the doors can be opened. So what they're saying, what I think he's saying, is that without the three grades, and each of those grades having a certain key that is open to them, right? Action, duty or service, and then understanding the unfoldment of your character through the Master Mason ritual, is that all those things take, it's like the magical practice or the mystical practice of meditation, single-pointedness and reflection, and understanding that single-pointedness can be moved through until we transcend the mundane, the Maya of our life, and then we are seeing life awakened. However, it doesn't stop there. That is through these things, that is a key to awaken the lost key of Freemasonry, that lost word. The true Master Mason recognizes the value of seeking for truth wherever he can find it. It makes no difference for it to be in the enemy's camp. If it be truth, he will go there gladly to secure it. Thinking of if you see truth, right? If you want to gain the Holy Grail, you will go on the adventure of a lifetime, no matter what kind of foe you face or greatness you come across. It is not upon gaining a sword or a secret token or like a word, but it is the experience had that makes you the key that opens the door of life, which the mystery can then be unveiled. Another way of saying that in the Heideggerian terms, which he's just stealing from the Greeks or using from the Greeks, is the term aletheia. Aletheia is a Greek word meaning disclosure or unfoldment. Disclosure, we'll use that one. So what we say, what Parmenides, a pre-Socratic thinker, states is that aletheia or truth is only disclosed to you once you bring something from an enclosure or a shading into a clearing. And then upon bringing it to the clearing, the light is shining down upon it and discloses its nature to you. It is that back and forth of your being in the world and that awakening to your true nature of being, of Dasein, of being in the world, is that's what happens, is that things will be disclosed to you. So it's not that things should always be easy, but that we have to take heed and bring things that are dark and shadowy and veiled, and we bring it into the clearing, and then again, light shines upon it and it can unfold itself to you. Hopefully it is when you bring it into the clearing that it is through those actions that you are prepared to actually witness whatever that truth is. Because truth, I think, has the ability to be veiled many different times. And so you're only gaining certain layers of truth from it. Is truth all-encompassing? Is it the thing in and of itself? Some would state you'll never truly get to the thing itself or the noumena, right? We only ever experience phenomena. And it is only ever experienced that phenomena that our perceptions and intentionality dictate what we're experiencing of that truth. For the truth is always, as it's being disclosed to you, it discloses all of itself to you, but your own perception and I guess initiation level of life is what's going to tell you what you can actually take at that time. The thought that comes to me then from that is why psychedelics and certain styles of meditation and practices are actually really dangerous for a person if they don't do them slowly, right? Tai Chi and all these things, Kung Fu, all these embodied practices. Psychedelics aren't truly embodied, but they're like a really fast way to gain insight and reflection and truth. But if you take too much, you can burn out your nervous system and then you become a doddering fool or a desert in the waste, right? What is it? Crowley calls it a brother of the wandering waste is one of the terms that Crowley uses. And it's one of those things where being a wanderer of the waste, we tend to not understand things around us because all of a sudden we can't truly interact in the everyday society, which what we're reading is it's really important for us to interact in everyday society because that is the school of life and experience that we can then garner life experience, duty, that we must help others along the path, and that's truly being unselfish. Be unselfish, walk through the world with humility and modesty, and never puffing out our chest in whatever kind of initiatory ritualistic ranking we have. It doesn't matter that you've gone through all 3 grades. It actually doesn't, because it's not the 3 grades or the pin or the ring that signifies your grade. It is how you act in the world. Here we go. Let the Mason stand forth, and by the living doctrines which he preaches, show to his brother man the glory of his work. He holds the keys to truth. Let him unlock the door. And with his life and not his words, preach the doctrine which he has so long professed. The Father of God and brotherhood of man were united in the completion of the eternal temple, the great work, for which all things came into being and through which all shall glorify their Creator. So ends chapter 6. Little thing that says here on the side, the spirit of Freemasonry. Hiram Abiff represents the spirit of universal vitality. The martyred builder lies buried, awaiting the day of liberation, when his faithful sons shall free him for universal labor. The legend of Hiram Abiff is portrayed in many cults and schools of ancient times. Its presence in Freemasonry demonstrates the antiquity of the craft teaching. So, again, anyone who's listening out there, if you have questions, please ask. If you have statements, please tell them. The question comes to my mind, is why does any of this matter? And if through just listening to what Manly P. Hall is stating in here, and if you don't understand why this matters, you've kind of missed what's going on. It matters because of you are in the world, so make best of it and be a good person. So it's a kind of a ethical question, a moral question, is how do we do this and in this way? It's taking on the duty of being human and giving back to the world and refining the temple, refining the mind, and then taking on the path and then helping others as you go through it. Be that bodhisattva. Does it do you any good to ascend or go to the top of a mountain? Well, if that's your karma, then yes, you will do that. However, when you come down from the mountain, are you a good person, or are you just finding yourself better than others and gathering a flock of sheep, right? And like we're seeing in our day and age, many different gurus and spiritual teachers that I don't truly can give that term spiritual teachers to. The term teacher is a very important word. Teachers are there to be. Bruce Lee didn't even like the term teachers. He used the term signpost. I but guide the way for you to help yourself upon the path, which is why he integrated Taoism with and many other religions and philosophical teachings and mythologies. But he liked that one the most in that instance because he found it to be the most practical in an embodied way, that the Taoists had their embodied practice of meditation, shamanic ceremony, and ritual in their magical way, as well as their Tai Chi practice. And Tai Chi is an embodiment of the 5 elements in Chinese medicine theory, as well as the I Ching and the Bagua. Right, the Bagua as the 8 trigrams, not Bagua as the martial art, which also instills the 8 trigrams in that practice. But for the Taoists, the Tai Chi, the grand ultimate, was something that was really important because it helps the body interact in a way with the mind and the spiritual forces that are moving them, the forces of the 5 elements, that it's balancing them out. You're balancing out the yin energy with the yang energy. In the Chinese medicine, our body is built of many different nodes, meridians, as well as rivers or paths in them. And what we're trying to do, as if a river is either drying up or if it's overflowing, we must balance it out so it smoothly moves across. I think Avatar: The Last Airbender did one of the greatest analogies to the chakra system, in that these pools of energy, they become blocked through experiences, and there are practices that we take to unblock these pools of water, and they get mucky just like rivers do. You must help them upon their way. And so unblocking the meridians from whatever has ailed them, and helping the waters flow through our body will help us ascend into that Shenren, that master mason, that sage upon our path. Yeah. And so we have here why then I think in the media part of Magus in the media is that in why, I don't know, because I think that all these main characters, the hero's journey, right? Why is Luke Skywalker so important? And why did George Lucas read The Hero with 1,000 Faces? That those 1,000 faces are the faces that we see every day. And Luke Skywalker is just the normal person who's walking along the path, who falls upon teachings that he didn't know was just instilled into his very body. Skywalker being, the man who walks amongst the stars, and that he is the son of Anakin Skywalker, one of the greatest Jedi of all time, who fell to the dark side. And upon falling to the dark side, had to bring himself and transcend himself to be able to die a good man again. And what did he need to do? Well, his progeny helped him come back to the light. Luke went upon his path, found his teacher, who was so-called, seemed to be coincidentally the same teacher that taught his father, Anakin, and then went upon his journey to face off against the big bad guy, Palpatine, and then win that, and then became then a master in and of himself, and then being able to help his father ascend to the next level, so he could stand amongst the sages of that. And that we see these things all over the place, right? Not just in Star Wars, but in all great mythologies through time. And those mythologies then take their place in our everyday world, and we start to see them coming out again in our literature of today, in our anime of today, in our stories of today. And then it is just kind of sad how we get major corporations, Disney and Netflix and all these places, who every once in a while can tap into these archetypes, but then they want to supplant the archetype, the force that is older than history itself. And what they want to do is they want to propagandize individuals into a message. I think good stories tap into archetypes instinctually and tell you a message whether you like it or not. And it's those great stories, words actually have the ability to disclose truth to you, even though words seem to also cover things up. The right words in the right moment with the right space have the ability to transcend cultures and raise cultures from one paradigm into the next. And so right now, we take heed, and I'm asking, we must ask our friends and our family and make Disney and Netflix and all these other places, Amazon, Apple, and we must hold them to a high standard. We must make them come out with good stories, tap into archetypes again, and tell us a true story, a story that can help our body-mind temple unfold the path and to tell us the story that we all want. And that story is not just one story, but it's all stories that we want. We want all stories. It's not like I just want billions of stories coming at me. I want the all story, right? The all father, like Odin, right? I want that story of why did he hang himself on the tree? How did he lose his eye? What did he trade and sacrifice to gain certain power so he could help the universe? That story also comes out in Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist, Ed and Elle wanted to save their mother from death. She died. They wanted her to come back. They were just children. And in being just children, they had this secret power inside of them, whether they knew it or not. And that secret power inside of them was that their father, Hohenheim, spoiler alert, he was a philosopher's stone. And I think that is an analogy to all of us. We are all philosopher's stones. The philosopher's stone isn't just some stone I hold in my hand, but it is an alchemical process that we go through. And that Ed and Elle just wanted to bring their mother back because the father was off trying to defeat the big bad guy that they didn't know. They just thought he was an illegitimate father, but really their father had a path of his own. He had a journey of his own to accomplish. And that was to set up a giant transmutation circle that would negate the transmutation circle that the bad guy, the homunculus in the flask, was trying to do. The bad guy was trying to truly become God, not just merge with the one and embody the divine in action, but he was trying to take over God and be above that, which is the ultimate of hubris. And these little boys, these brothers, were like, we just want our mother. What does that mean? We just want a fully actualized anima and animus within us. And how do we get that? They didn't really know the ultimate taboo being human transmutation, trying to bring a soul back into life from death, but they did it anyway. They studied hard. And in doing so, it didn't work because you cannot bring a soul back from life. You cannot bring somebody back from death, they found out. And what happened? They sacrificed Al's body, got put into a giant suit of armor, and Ed sacrificed both his arm and his leg. And then what they do, they went through a huge journey to try to understand life. They gained friendship. Ed gained a heart made full metal. And in doing so, he realized that it wasn't the powers that he had in alchemy, but it was the friends and family around him that truly gave him power. And so he confronted truth in many ways. And in confronting truth, they learned something really important about themselves and about reality as such. And then it gave them power to make the ultimate sacrifice, giving up alchemy in and of itself. This is just another story, right? Like Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker had to face his dad in the end and fight him off, but never truly gave into the dark side, but merged the dark side with himself. In Return of the Jedi, we see him in full dark side regalia, and he does the mind control and the altering of things. But in the end, he doesn't just kill his father like Palpatine wanted him to do, and then remain with the two, the apprentice Sith Lord style of things, but instead he was able to defeat Emperor Palpatine. What happens? Disney ruins it, and they bring Palpatine back because they don't have creativity. They are wolf in sheep's clothing when it comes to things. They don't know how magic truly works anymore. All they know is how to do is propagandize individuals into trying to swallow the message. Critical Drinker is a YouTuber out there who I think is hilarious, and he has come out, and that's what he called it, the message that these entertainment industries are constantly trying to push. What is the message? The message is the demiurgic push of egotism, shallowness, selfishness, and trying to push this cultural message to divide and conquer instead of trying to unite and absolve us from this paradigm that we're living in, so we can transcend it and move on in our civilization. And so if we can bring back to my idea, bring back true stories back to the individual, back to our if the TV screens, if McCullen talks about how the medium is the message, if our TV screens can give us and our computers can give us a true story again, it can actually be a black mirror of goodness instead of the show Black Mirror or the ancient mirrors that seers would use. That would, a lot of the times they're doing it for not good things, but it wasn't always like that. A lot of the times you can use these things for positiveness, and actually they only truly work that way because we're trying to, again, burn away karma and not gain demons, not gain Maya, but move away from forms altogether that just are shadows amongst a wall. Like we are sitting like slaves in Plato's cave. Move away from the cave, understand the shadows are all around us, and they are just that. They are not things. They are not people. They're just shadows. And that they're NPCs, and that we want to put around us true people, large minds, big thinkers, so that then we can formulate our own groups to create our own communities that no matter what happens in the world, we, as a community, we can move as one organism, with each individual having a power in and of themselves instead of sheep and mass herd mentality, which then pushes the message. They don't actually think for themselves, but they do what the demiurgic establishment wants them to do. And again, we are not victims to that demiurge. That is just another being in the long chain of beings, right? Big B being, God, is something that is continually trying to unveil itself to us. So let's allow it to do so. And that's what stories are about. And I think that's what, again, go back to why I love anime so much, is that not anime as a whole, but there are certain stories out there like that have the ability to show us truth and to give us true heroes. Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, right? Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen, Ed and Al from Full Metal Alchemist, Goku from Dragon Ball Z, right? There's so many of them that they are in abundance and they're there in our fingertips, and we watch them and we see them. Now let's supplant the idea and the metaphor and analogy of the Master Mason, why Freemasonry is ultimately of what Manly P. Hall, if we're defining things, Manly P. Hall is talking, why it's so important is because of that's what we're doing. How can you become the hero on your path if you don't understand what it takes to be a fully realized individual or to be the Master Mason? It's for all humans in human society to do that, because if not, you are but an animal. And then let's talk about another great analogy in Dune. The great Frank Herbert wrote this in the very first chapter of the book. We get this confrontation between Paul Atreides, and Mother Gaius Moham. Jessica brings her son into her teacher, the Mother Superior of all the Bene Gesserit, the secret society of women, right? If Freemasonry is a secret society of men, the secret society of women in this story is the Bene Gesserit, right? And it's just another way to tell the story of humanness. The Bene Gesserit for the feminine, the Freemasons for the masculine. But Manly P. Hall in this book, I think, is talking about the Master Mason as all genders, right? Both masculine and feminine, both male and female, can become this evolved individual. And that the Bene Gesserit have this way of separating animals from humans. And I don't have the book with me right now to describe that line, but it, like, the feeling every time I read the line in that chapter in the beginning is just, it sends shivers down my spine. They use the Gom Jabbar and the black box. The Gom Jabbar sits at the side of Paul's neck as the Bene Gesserit, like Mother Superior, the leader. She's so fast and she sits it there, just sitting there, a poison that could kill him in an instant. Jessica, his mother, knows this, that if he acts out in emotion or with puffed chest and doesn't feel like he has to do it, moves his hand out of the box, that he could die at any moment. And she will understand that she has trained him. All her training has not helped, and her son dies. But instead, as he slides his hand into the Gom Jabbar, into the black box, as the Gom Jabbar is sitting at his neck, the black box sears his hand almost as if it goes down to the bone. And yet she's telling him the story of what it takes to be a human, right? Long story short, an animal will chew off his own hand as the pain, because an animal gets caught in the trap, and it'll chew off its own hand to run away and weep in cowardness. But a human will wait for whoever set that trap to arrive and then kill that person, and then free themselves for it, or just die alone. But the idea is that a human has higher reasoning faculties and doesn't have to withstand the pain of the burningness of the black box, or the pain of being set in this trap. That we will not just run and cower with our emotions, but we will stand on high and say, we have the right to live. And in that right to live, I will use my higher mind that has mastered its emotions, that has mastered its bodily urges and desires, and that I can be trusted, because animals cannot be trusted. And so we walk around in our everyday life, and we can use this analogy to understand that we are not, all of our compatriots out here are maybe human. And I don't mean that as in a bad way, and it's like, you're not human, but it's like, we can go back to the small mind, large mind analogy, that like not everyone has mastered or conquered their desires. And even myself, have its animalness at times, who runs rampant with its own traumas and emotions. But through walking the path of the magician, through walking the path of the hero, and laying down certain moral and ethical structures and practices and dedication, we can become that human who is aspiring to unite with the divine. I have, before this part of the book ends, I have an epilogue. And so I would like to end this with the epilogue right now. So the epilogue is the Priest of Ra. What words are there in modern language to describe the great temple of Amun-Ra? It now stands amidst the sands of Egypt, a pile of broken ruins, but in the heyday of its glory, it rose a forest of plumbed pillars, holding up roofs of solid sandstone, carved by hands long laid to rest into friezes of lotus blossoms and papyrus, and colored lifelike by pigments, the secrets of which were lost with the civilization that discovered them. A checkerboard floor of black and white blocks stretched out until it was lost among the wilderness of pillars. From the massive walls, the impassive faces of gods, unnamed, looked down upon the silent files of priests, who kept alight the altar fires, whose feeble glow alone lighted the massive chambers throughout the darkness of an Egyptian night. It was a weird, impressive scene, and the flickering lights sent strange, ghostly forms scurrying among the piles of granite, which rose like mighty altars from the darkness below, to be lost in the shadows above. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, carrying in his hand a small oil lamp, which pierced the darkness like some distant star, bringing into strange relief the figure of him who bore it. He appeared to be old, for his long beard and braided hair were quite gray, but his large black eyes shone with a fire seldom seen in even youth. He was robed from head to foot in blue and gold, and around his forehead was coiled a snake of precious metal, set with jeweled eyes that gave out flashes of light. Never had the light of Ra's chamber shone on the grandeur head, or a form more powerful than that of the high priest of the temple. He was the mouthpiece of the gods, and the sacred wisdom of ancient Egypt was impressed in fiery letters upon his soul. As he crossed the great room, in one hand the scepter of the priestcraft, in the other the tiny lamp. He was more like a spirit visitor from the beyond than environs of death than a physical being. For his jeweled sandals made no sound, and the sheen from his robes formed a halo of light around his stately form. Down through the silent passageways lined with their massive pillars passed the phantom figure. Down steps lined with kneeling sphinxes and through avenues of crouching lions, the priest picked his way until at last he reached a vaulted chamber, whose marble floor bore strange designs traced in some language long forgotten. Each angle of the many-sided and dimly lighted room was filled by a seated figure carved in stone, so massive that its head and shoulders were lost in shadow no eye could pierce. In the center of the mystic chamber stood a great chest of some black stone carved with serpents and strange winged dragons. The lid was a solid slab weighing hundreds of pounds without handle of any kind, and the chest apparently had no means of being opened without the aid of some Herculean power. The high priest leaned over, and from the lamp he carried lighted the fire upon an altar that stood near, sending the shadows of that weird chamber scurrying into the most distant corners. As the flame rose, it was reflected from the great stone faces above, which seemed to stare at the black coffers in the center of the room with the strange, sightless eyes. Raising his serpent-wound staff and facing the chest of somber marble, the priest called out in a voice that echoed and re-echoed from every nook and cranny of the ancient temple. Eredemas, come forth. Then a strange thing happened. The heavy slab that formed the cover of the great coffer slowly raised as though lifted by an unseen hands, and there emerged from its dark recesses a slim, white-clad figure with his forearms crossed on his breast. The figure of a man, perhaps 30 years old, his long black hair hanging down upon his white robe shoulders in strange contrast to the seamless garment that he wore. His face, devoid of emotion, was as handsome and serene as the great face of Amun-Ra himself that gazed down upon the scene. Silently, Eredemas stepped from the ancient tomb and advanced slowly toward the high priest. When about 10 paces from the earthly representative of the gods, he paused, unfolded his arms, and extended them across his chest in salutation. In one hand he carried a cross with a ring as the upper arm, and this he proffered to the priest. Eredemas stood in silence as the high priest, raising his scepter to one of the great stone figures, addressed an invocation to the sun god of the universe. This finished, he then addressed the youthful figure as follows. Eredemas, you seek to know the mystery of creation. You ask that the divine illumination of the thrice greatest and the wisdom that for ages has been the one gift the gods would showered upon mankind be entrusted to you. Little you understand of the thing you ask, but those who know have said that he who proves worthy may receive the truth. Therefore stand you here today to prove your divine birthright to the teaching that you ask. The priest pronounced these words slowly and solemnly, and then pointed with his scepter to a great dim archway surmounted by a winged globe of gleaming gold. Before thee, Upon those steps and through those passageways lies the path that leads to the eye of judgment and the feet of Amun-Ra. Go, and if thy heart be pure as the garment that thou wearest, and if thy motive be unselfish, thy feet shall not stumble, and thy being shall be filled with light. But remember that Typhon and his hosts of death lurk in every shadow, and that death is the result of failure. Eridamos turned again and again, folded his arms over his breast in the sign of the cross. As he walked slowly through the somber arch, the shadows of the great unknown closed over him, who had dedicated his life to the search for the eternal. The priest watched him until he was lost to sight among the massive pillars beyond the silent span that divided the living from the dead. Then slowly falling on his knees before the gigantic statue of Ra, and raising his eyes to the shadows that through the long night concealed the face of the sun god, he prayed that the youth might pass from the darkness of the temple pillars to the light he sought. It seemed that for a second a glow played around the face of the enormous statue, and a strange hush of peace filled this ancient temple. The high priest sensed this, for rising, he relighted his lamp and walked slowly away. His beacon of light shone fainter and fainter in the distance, and finally was lost to view among the papyrus blooms of temple pillars. All that remained were the dying flames on the altar, which sent strange flickering glows over the great stone coffer and the 12 judges of the Egyptian dead. In the meantime, Eridamos, his hands still crossed on his breast, walked slowly onward and upward until the last ray from the burning altar fire was lost to view among the shadows far behind. Through years of purification, he had prepared himself for the great ordeal, and with a purified body and a balanced mind, he wended his way in and out among the pillars that loomed about him. As he walked along, there seemed to radiate from his being a faint golden glow, which illuminated the pillars as he passed them. He seemed a ghostly form in a grove of ancient trees. He seemed a ghostly form amid a grove of ancient trees. Suddenly the pillars widened and out to form another vaulted room dimly lit by a reddish haze. As Eridamos proceeded, there appeared around him swirling wisps of this scarlet light. First they appeared as swiftly moving clouds, but slowly they took form, and strange misty figures and flowing draperies hovered in the air and held out long swaying arms to stay his progress. Wraiths of ruddy mist hovered about him and whispered soft words into his ears, while weird music like the voice of the storm and the cries of the night birds resounded through the lofty halls. Still Eridamos walked on calm and masterfully, his fine spiritual face outlined by his raven locks in strange contrast to the sinuous forms that gathered around and tried to lure him from his purpose. Unmindful of strange forms that beckoned from ghostly archways and the pleading of soft voices, he passed steadily on his way with but one thought in his mind. Fiat lux. Let there be light. The ghastly music grew louder and louder, terminating at last in a mighty roar. The very walls shook, the dancing forms swayed like flickering candle shadows, and still, pleading and beckoning, vanished among the pillars of the temple. As the temple walls tottered, Eridamos paused. Then with slow, measured step, he resumed his search for some ray of light, finding always darkness deeper than before. Suddenly before him loomed another doorway, flanked on either side by an obelisk of carved marble, one black and the other white. Through the doorway glowed a dim light concealed by a gossamer veil of blue silk. As Eridamos slowly climbed the flight of steps leading to the doorway, there materialized upon the ground at his feet a swirl of lurid mist. In the faint glow that it cast, it twisted like some oily gas, filling the entire chamber with a loathsome miasma. Then out of this cloud issued a gigantic form, half human, half reptile. In its bloodshot eyes burned ruddy pools of demon fire, while great claw-like hands reached out to enfold and crush the slender figure that confronted it. Eridamos wavered for a single instant at the horrible apparition, lunged forward, its size doubly magnified in the iridescent fog. Then the white-robed neophyte again slowly advanced, his arms still crossed on his breast. He raised his fine face, illumined by a divine light, and courageously faced the hideous specter. As he confronted the menacing form, for an instant, it loomed over him like a towering demon. Suddenly, Eridamos raised the cross he carried and held it up before the monster. As he did so, the crux ansata gleamed with a wondrous golden light, which, striking the oily, scaly monster, seemed to dissolve its every particle into golden sparks as the last of the demon guardian vanished before the rays of the cross. A bolt of lightning flashed through the ancient hallways and, striking the veil that hung between the obelisk, rent it down the center and disclosed a vaulted chamber with circular dome, dimly lighted by invisible lamps. Bearing his now flaming cross, Eridamos entered the room and instinctively gazed upward to the lofty dome. There, floating in space far above his head, he saw a great closed eye, surrounded by fleecy clouds and rainbow colors. Along Eridamos gazed upon the wonderful sight, for he knew that it was the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye of the gods. As he stood there, he prayed that the will of the gods might be made known unto him, and that in some way he might be found worthy to open that closed eye in the temple of the living God. As he stood there gazing upward, the eyelid flickered. As the great orb slowly opened, the chamber was filled with a dazzling, blinding light that seemed to consume the very stones with fire. Eridamos staggered. It seemed as if every atom of his being was scorched by the effulgence of that glow. He instinctively closed his eyes, and now he feared to open them, for in that terrific blaze of splendor, it seemed that only blindness would follow his action. Little by little, a strange feeling of peace and calm descended upon him, and at length he dared to open his eyes, to find that the glare was gone. The entire chamber was bathed in a soft, wondrous glow from the mighty eye in the ceiling. The white robe he had worn had also given place to one of the living fire, which blazed as though with the reflection of thousands of lesser eyes from the divine orb above. As his eyes became accustomed to the glow, he saw that he was no longer alone. He was surrounded by 12 white-robed figures who, bowing before him, held up strange insignia wrought from living gold. As Eridamos looked, all the figures pointed, and as he followed the direction of their hands, he saw a staircase of living light that led far above onto the dome and past the eye of the ceiling. With one voice, the 12 said, "Yon lies the way of liberation." Without a moment's hesitation, Eridamos mounted the staircase, and with feet that seemed to barely touch the steps, climbed upward into the dawn of great unknown. At last, after climbing many steps, he reached a doorway that opened as he neared it. The breath of morning air fanned his cheek, and a golden ray of sunshine played among the waves of his dark hair. He stood on the top of a mighty pyramid, before him a blazing altar. In the distance, far over the horizon, the rolling sand of the Egyptian desert reflected the first rays of the morning sun, which, like a globe of golden fire, rose again out of the eternal east. As Eridamos stood there, a voice that seemed to issue from the very heavens chanted a strange song, and a hand reaching out as if it were the globe of day itself placed a serpent wrought of gold upon the brow of the new initiate. "Behold Kephra, the rising sun, for as he brings the mighty globe of a day out of darkness of night between his claws, so for thee the Son of Spirit has risen from the darkness of night, and in the name of the living God, we hail thee, Priest of Ra." So mote it be. Beautiful. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Manly P. Hall. We are not done with the book, for we have more to go. We have next episode, the addenda, the robe of blue and gold. The robe of blue and gold. And then from there, the emerald tablet of Hermes. I will continue this into it. There is after that the classic works of Freemasonry of the ancient Egyptians and the Masonic orders of fraternity. And so we have more of this story to go. But I would like to end this by asking you to subscribe, like, and share, and I will be continuing these stories. I will be having more anime and film and literature breakdowns coming out every week. And I'd just like to say I hope everyone out there has a wonderful evening and a great journey. And if you ever have any questions, please comment, and we will talk about them. So until next time, have a wonderful evening.